Hello, everyone. It's January 9th, 2018. It's Tuesday. It's Harp Tuesday. Welcome to 2018. Happy New Year. And for this episode of Harp Tuesday, I thought I would take a look at one of the pieces from Kim Robertson's book, Celtic Harp Solos. It was one of my favorites from the book. It's Alfonso the 12th, El Sabio. Now, trying to do a little bit of research about the origins of this piece, I'm wondering if it's actually music attributed to Alfonso the 10th, Alfonso El Sabio X, who there's a collection, for example, of songs to Saint Mary or Maria that is attributed often to him, apparently, and he's the right era because it says 13th century Spain. Anyway, regardless of the origins of this piece, it's a beautiful, fantastic, fun piece to play, and quite a interesting rhythm and sound, and definitely you can tell that it is this very early kind of music, church music. And so let me try playing it for you. Beautiful piece, and a lot of fun to play. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of what's going on here. So one of the first things perhaps to be aware of is the rhythm. So it's notated in 6/8, and what it does is it keeps changing the pulse. And Deborah Hansen-Conant in Baroque Flamenco does the same thing. It's a very Spanish type of thing where you're feeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Somebody asked me once, why 6, 8, 3, 4, why those two different meters, right? Because they both contain 6/8 notes, right? And so typically, the reason for those two different ways we might say that a bar will contain 6/8 notes has to do with how we feel the bigger pulse. Yes, there are 6/8 notes, but how do we feel those? How do we break them up? So in 3/4, typically we'll feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we're counting those 6/8 notes, right? We feel three pulses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 6/8, we'll typically feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So two pulses, two groups of three, as opposed to three groups of two. So what's happening here is we keep changing. We have these two pickups, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2. Especially the way she's notated the left hand, we kind of get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or perhaps we're feeling it all in 6/8 with just these offbeats. But it's that interesting pulse, interesting drive, and especially when we get those left hand notes or chords coming in on kind of the and. It's quite magical. And another thing to notice, looking at patterns, right? We're learning a new piece. It's always handy to try and find as many patterns to glom onto as possible so that instead of, again, having to learn a whole bunch of notes, we just see, oh, this pattern, and, it's a lot easier to say, this is a 1-5-8 shape than it is to say, oh, it's a D and an A and another D and have to find all three of those notes. So the beginning, first two lines, the first kind of verse, notice that we have the same left-hand shape, this D chord, D and A, a fifth here, throughout. Now it's not always coming in the same place rhythmically, right? But it is the same chord. And just right at the very end, down to C, and then the same D chord but broken up, so one after another. And again, this is the type of piece, and again, this music from this era, there often wasn't a harmony, right? So we could just have we could drone. In other words, by drone I mean repeat the same chord throughout this entire piece. She's got some chord changes; they're beautiful, but we could, even where the chord changes happen, we could just keep this going. Interesting with the chord changes, but that drone effect is kind of fun too, and that's very much what we have on those first two lines, the first sort of verse. And the nice thing is we can kind of see that pattern in the left hand, and now just concentrate on the right hand. For the most part, I think the right hand is fairly straightforward. This first verse, first two lines is pretty easy. Second two lines, so the third line actually is the one that contains, to my mind, the hardest spot in the piece, where we have. And this is mainly because of what the left hand's doing, because the right hand's done this at the very beginning. We have the first two lines, and then we repeat them with a slightly fuller left hand. We get this beautiful 1-5-8, this nice, rich D chord down there. Notice how there's back to our old D and A up here, and then there's a lot going on there with the left hand, and we're bouncing off each time we can't connect. So when you identify something like that, that's a great spot to say, okay, I'm going to do some extra practice there. And what I did. That kind of is one little snippet that we could try and get that feeling really secure and fluid. Maybe, so this concept that I've touched on before of trying to attain this feeling of competence, of knowing, maybe it's not perfect, but knowing, this is what it's going to feel like. This is what it should feel like. So depending on the complexity of the piece and your technique level and whatnot, it's not that you're going to achieve perfection immediately, but you have that sense of what it's going to feel like, rather than a sense of scramble, right? Of not feeling at all secure. You achieve that sense of security, for lack of a better word. And so this is a great spot to be thinking about that. So maybe you find that even doing just, maybe you need to break it down further. Okay, maybe, this little left hand, right? Thinking about a little bounce here in the left hand. Nice. Both hands bounce off. Then can we back up a little bit? Remember 3 here. Really kind of leading with boom, 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 that pulse, that rhythm going on in both hands. And then we fall back down. So again, we might just try. Or how about whatever speed, right, that you do, and breaking it down to the point where it does start to become comfortable and you can get a sense of what it's going to feel like when it's really secure, and then work on as Yogi Bear said, if you don't know where you're going, you might not get there. So what we're looking for is that creating that path to where we want to be. And if we don't have any sense of where we want to be, it's hard to get there. Whereas once we create that path, then we can make that path stronger and stronger and stronger. So again, to me, this entire piece, this is a perfect example of a smaller spot where we'd want to maybe do some extra practice just to get that feeling really fluid and secure. And again, breaking it down, doing whatever it takes to try and get that sense of where you're going. Then we get a middle section with these chord changes, which is quite nice, right? And notice we've got these same fifths that we had at the beginning, right? Different chords, but a fifth, tonic and the dominant, and we could do them both with 1 and 3, but I would prefer to go 2 and 4. Not essential, but 2 and 4, and 1 and 3 when we're jumping like this, because it means we have to move a little bit less. The thumb doesn't have to go all the way down to this C. And just in general, once we start to get lower on the harp like this, we're often finding maybe a 1-5-8. So we'd be finding that fifth with 4 and 2, and it's a reasonable habit, I think, to get into. So 2 and 4, 2 and 4. And I would do both of these with 2 and 4, I think, even though I could certainly do them with 1 and 3. Sorry. One last thing to talk about there is we have, for example, these 2 F chords, and then I'm going to play this G fifth with 2 and 4. What do we do to avoid that? The buzzing, right? So we could try and sneak our way on. And again, it's mainly the 4th finger, I think, but also the 2nd finger that can cause some problems getting on that D, the back of the fingernail touching the string beneath it that's vibrating. On this harp in particular, that C is a wire string, so even more sort of vigorous vibration going on there. We can try and sneak in, or what I might end up doing is actually stopping that lower F. Right? So and again, you could watch when I originally played, you can actually use YouTube to create slow motion, slow it down and see, did I stop that? So here I'm just imagining I'm placing on that 4th and just sliding to the G. And for me, I do that automatically. I don't even think about it, right? Some of these muffling stuff. But if you find that you're buzzing in something like that, yes, you could try and avoid, sneak on and avoid those ringing strings, or you could try to do a little bit of muffling, and that can be nice, right? Because a lot of sound, a little bit cleaner maybe if we do stop that F. So something just to be aware of on something like this where we got some of these lower chords. It's quite short as written, right? As you heard. You could certainly repeat it, maybe up an octave. You could start having fun with a tune. You could mess around with doing some different left-hand accompaniments. I think there's a lot of scope for imagination in this, but it's also beautiful just as written, and possibly repeated if you wanted something slightly longer. So, and apart from that, anything else in here? Any other patterns? No, not really. Noticing all the repetition, right? And the fact that the right hand does repeat. Those first two lines and the second two lines are exactly the same in the right hand. So always looking for patterns, of course, in a new piece. But in general, I think this is a fantastic piece, and a lot of good music in this book. So this again was Alfonso the 12th, possibly the 10th, El Sabio, from Kim Robertson's Celtic Harp solos. Hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Cheers.